right, everybody, let's have some fun here. Next up, the Frontier of XR Gaming panel. We have a great set of panelists here, but I'm going to let our moderator introduce them. So our moderator today is Dean Takahashi. He's the head writer for GamesBeat and VentureBeat. And without further ado, let's bring Dean up here, and he'll introduce the rest of the crew. Let's have some fun.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I just finished doing our GamesBeat Summit Next conference yesterday, and so that was a lot of work, and I'm kind of tired. But hey, we're going to soldier on through this, and we have a great session for you about VR and XR and AR and gaming. And I want to introduce our panelists. So we have Tommy Palm. He's the CEO of Resolution Games. And then David Levitt from Pantomime Corporation. And Sonya Haskins, VR Fitness Insider. And Patrick Hackett, who's an independent XR creator. So thanks, everybody. And I'm going to have them introduce more about themselves. Tommy, do you want to give a
Sure.
One-minute bio here? Or?
Absolutely. So my name is Tommy Palm. I'm the founder and CEO of Resolution Games, Stockholm game studio that is focusing on VR and AR games.
Sorry. I'm David Levitt, co-founder and CEO of Pantomime Corporation. I had the good fortune of being on the team at VPL Research that invented the term and the business of virtual reality. And we're doing physically realistic games using LiDAR, current one big reality faucet.
I'm Sonya Haskins, known as Hasko7 in the gaming community. I'm a journalist by trade, so I write for AR Post and VR Fitness Insider and Gaming Trend, a couple of other magazines. I actually am also a community manager, so I help with some of the largest games in the gaming / esports industry, like Population 1, Echo Arena, and Larcenauts. So it's great to be here. Thank you guys so much for showing up.
My name is Patrick Hackett. I'm an independent game dev creative technologist. Most recently, I worked with the iLusions team and shipped Space Pirate Arena. And then prior to that, I spent about 6 years at Google running Tiltbrush.
Anybody use Tiltbrush out there? Yeah, very cool. You know, it's interesting to see VR and XR, AR all sort of come into fashion and out of fashion and into fashion again. Like it's been a very interesting cycle. And you know, just yesterday, Strauss Zelnick, the CEO of Take-Two Interactive, he kind of came out swinging and said he was very skeptical of VR, skeptical of the metaverse, but he was a fan of NFTs. So that tells you how quickly things maybe just sort of come in and out of flavor. And Tommy, you've been in this for like a long time, and I wonder what you think about this sort of cycle, I guess, of popularity or lack of popularity, I guess.
Yeah, I remember testing VR back in '92 for the first time, and being a big believer that it will be like the natural big step for video games. And then with Resolution, we started 7 years ago. And I mean, it's still rather niche in terms of it isn't a super big avenue for games yet, but I'm sure it will become. There's so much new, interesting things that happens to your brain when you're really in the medium. So I'm very bullish, obviously.
And David, you have any thoughts?
I have to say, even though I'm somewhat of a VR innovator and a VR skeptic, I'm really focused on augmented reality. And as I said on the ethics panel 2 years ago, the headsets are overhyped, overrated, and still, unfortunately, isolating. And it'll be a while, longer than anyone ever predicts or thinks, before there is a great experience with, say, glasses that are lightweight enough that AR makes any sense as a face-based thing. I think People are missing all the great handheld augmented reality experiences in some cases that will dominate the next 5 years, and especially with things like accurate LiDAR, I'm delighted to be focused on that.
Sonya, any thought on this?
So to the point of the popularity of NFTs, this question is
Well,
so,
just sort of the whole cycle of becoming popular and sort of the best thing there is, and then all of a sudden everybody hates you.
well,
I don't know.
the thing is, you can always use something like that. Look at our shoes and our clothes and different brands we wear. So like in my realm, in the gaming realm and esports, I definitely can see that being something where people maybe purchase a certain thing or get a certain thing, and if they attend a competition, a particular competition, for example, or something. And so I don't like the idea of ever saying never, because the world is a vast place and you never know how things are going to change. But I just think it's definitely a possibility that it could become a popular thing in certain communities.
Patrick, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. My only thoughts on the coming and goings of it really are just about, it feels like there are a number of different technologies that tend to come into favor and then out of favor, but altogether they're all moving forward. And I think it's because there's this dream that people are like they have a shared imagination of that happens, in 20 years or something like that. And there's different pieces that you can push forward and get really exciting, and then push this other piece forward and it gets really exciting. And ultimately, they kind of all push themselves to that future point.
Yeah, I guess Mark Zuckerberg got everybody excited about the metaverse recently, so it feels like, at least VR is the lead platform to go enjoy that, I guess, right? So it feels like it's back in the fashion right now. So this is good. Does anybody have a strong opinion about just definitions of AR and XR and VR? Anything? I mean, this is a pretty savvy crowd that I think understands what those general definitions are, but I don't know if you're picky about what you think these words mean. Or
I think it's absolutely very confusing, at least. I don't know if there's strong industry standard. I know AR, some big companies refer to that as when you're seeing through the screen and superimposing objects on top of it, whereas the mobile, which normally should be called XR in that definition because it's a pass-through camera, is called AR Kit and AR Core, right?
Anybody else?
Yeah, it is. The pass-through cameras for headsets start to blur that distinction, but I think most of the experiences don't really. It's more like VR where you don't bump into anything and need a handler. Until there are really great AR apps for headsets, it is still a pretty big divide, and the mobile AR I tend to think of as the real AR. And it'll, again, until there's lightweight glasses, that might be a better definition.
I say it's a good question, but I don't know. For me personally, it doesn't really matter. I'll use whatever works and what's good, and let's all just work forward to move the industry in a moving forward direction. So like you were saying, it's one of those things where it's a good question, but honestly, I don't want to limit us either with definitions of that sort, because sometimes things do overlap, and the second you put certain parameters on, then you say, oh, well, that's not this, or that's not this, or, so I don't know. That's kind of my opinion on that question.
Yeah, no, I'll side with you, Sonya.
It's fun.
So pretty wide open question here. What's the most interesting greenfield opportunity that you see for games and XR? And let's start with Patrick on that.
You know what I'm really hopeful for? I think one of the big opportunities, and I'm gonna plug Space Pirate Arena really hard right now, but one of the great parts about Space Pirate Arena is that it requires 10 meters by 10 meters to play, which is very, very large, and so it requires you to get people together and go to a place. Like, it's rare that you're gonna, do it by yourself. But that, to me, is special. It's, like video games are oftentimes, home video games, console video games are oftentimes something you do by yourself. And I think that VR has a tendency to isolate people even further. And I know that there's a lot of great networking games. Tommy, you guys released a phenomenal game for like shared networking spaces. But I think that XR games have an opportunity to get people back playing with each other. And whether that's seeing someone next to you and playing the game with them, or like going and finding your friends and getting together to play things. So that's it.
So you want people colliding with each other in location-based entertainment then?
Well, but that's the thing, right? Like if you have that pass-through ability, then you won't collide with them because they're in front of you.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, I like the question because it's a very open-ended type question. You can answer that any way you want, and I'll answer by saying that the opportunities in this industry are so vast, and literally you can pretty much do anything. We were talking yesterday evening about all the people that are here at this conference, for example, live and even virtually, but you have a huge group of people who do have fantastic skills, but they're also different, and there's a lot of collaboration and cooperation going on with different things. But at this point, each of those different individuals are using those skills to try to build something that will be the foundation of our future. And so there are literally so many more of those opportunities, and then eventually those people are going to have competitors coming in doing the same things. But there is a great opportunity here for anyone who is an entrepreneur, or even like me. I mean, I wasn't in the tech industry at all, and definitely I'm not a developer, but I'm really, really good with people and interacting with communities. So that's even an opportunity where maybe it won't be a huge mega million-dollar corporation, obviously, but still there are opportunities for individuals as well. So it's a good.
You've zeroed in on XR fitness, really, and that's one of the things that obviously has worked.
Absolutely.
Right? And so, within that space, what else do you see that is like
And XR fitness specifically?
Hasn't been done yet? Yeah.
Well, I mean, just to give you an example, a few years ago when I started doing this, we had our esports players and people in the different leagues and stuff who we noticed that when we played, people would hit things, obviously. Everybody here knows that. You're reaching out and hitting things. So we started talking with a company, Proximat, who wanted to create mats. And so we said, okay, well, literally, guys, we're creating this industry, from the ground up. And so we said, what kind of space are we looking at that's not play space abuse, because we didn't have space proud arena or trainer. And so then how do you define that sort of thing? So now they create mats that are used by not only our esports players, but also our fitness industry, because people want to make sure they stay within that. Obviously you have guardians and things, but most people want to take off their shoes and play in a space where they still feel comfortable. And then you have grips. And that's just a silly, those are silly little examples maybe, but at the same time they're not, because as the industry grows and you have millions of people using these devices, that's potentially hundreds of thousands of sales for each of these little products that these guys are now creating. So it's just a way to look at it a little differently. Like, you got to start somewhere, and so to have that dream and go with it.
I think when you bring up esports and fitness, it feels unfair again that sports started out with the jocks dominating it, and then when esports came, all the nerds got to join in too and be the star athletes and whoop the butts of the jocks. And if esports starts becoming a XR fitness thing, it's going to require physical dexterity again.
Uh-oh.
It's like, that's unfair.
But that's one of the good things about VR esports is the fact that traditional esports, they are sitting still. There's so much skill required, but they're stationary. But with VR esports, you're up moving around. You're doing all that movement and getting the heart rate up a lot. And so there are tremendous advantages to cardio and physical and everything, or your muscle tone and everything else. So it's really cool. VR esports is the way to go.
And David, is there a greenfield that you're very interested in as well?
Sorry?
What's the greenfield opportunity that you're really interested in?
I think there's some surprises in the latest sensors, And by the way, maybe this is another answer to what you asked earlier. You can almost break things down into the indigenous, where you care about the space that you're in, and the colonial, where you don't. Video games and VR without even a background camera is colonial. I don't care what I'm knocking over, I'm going to win. And indigenous, AR is indigenous, where the thing I most care about is how does this fit with what's really there. So, but of course you can mix them. And I realized running a LiDAR scanner app with my phone that in about 45 seconds I had made a complete model of the room I was in, including my desk, my kitchen, and my computer. Well, that could be part of a VR environment. That could be when in fact, this isn't just a VR question. When I'm hosting a Zoom or anything, rather than putting a placard of the place I wish I was in Hawaii or something, it could be the room that I'm in, and I could share it right before the conference with everyone there, so they're really in the room with me. And if they're in something like Reality Faucet, they could stack things on my desk and have a whole experience that's indigenous to their host's environment. And it's not really advanced technology. That scan, I practically did that accidentally. It could be a part of Zoom next week. And I think that we're going to be seeing some of that, where things that were designed for 3D nerds leak quickly into popular culture.
Yeah, I interviewed the Vario people about their Vario reality cloud, right? And you can have one person with a really powerful headset scan an entire room, and then they could connect to other people, and those people could come visit that room, and then see it from a different point of view from even the person who scanned it, right? And
I think it's a big empathy thing. You're where they are.
Yeah, exactly. And Tommy, any greenfields?
Yeah, I'm super interested in social aspects of gaming. I've always been. I think it's correct. VR can be very isolating, but it can also, on the flip side, be extremely social and really great for being close together, even though somebody is on the other side of the world. And in AR, we have the great opportunity to combine that. So you can be like a few people locally and somebody far away. So that's one aspect. I definitely think that the sport genre or the hybrids there is great as well. And I do think that board games will have kind of a renaissance with this technology, because it can be so social, and we've seen that with this Demio game that we released earlier.
I haven't got to see it here, but I hear the Tilt 5 demo is pretty good here.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's seen it, but yeah. Is that Jerry? I don't know. Yeah, it's many different opportunities here. And Tommy, you just announced the AR division. You want to talk about why?
I think when we started Resolution Games, we were very bullish on the whole spatial computing in general, and felt that that's going to be like the next computing platform. And we said, AR is amazing, but it's going to be further away in the future. So let's start with virtual reality. And now we're at the point where consumer headsets is about to show up. So it's been great to be on the show floor and test things that is about to happen. I think I love to be a little bit too early to the. As an engineer, it's so great to be able to be creative and try to figure stuff out before there is a standard. And then eventually, hopefully, have established brands that then can work when the mass market comes.
Are you betting on when some of these interesting AR things are going to show up?
Well, I think with
are they already here?
It's starting to come, but it will be for early adopters for some time.
Just kind of curious about Apple, Facebook. Yeah. Maybe Google.
Tommy's running through all the NDAs in this.
Yeah.
Let's break a few of those today. Patrick, I guess I'm curious, when you're doing Tilt Brush, what was sort of the aspiration there? What was really what you guys wanted to achieve with that? And part two of that would be if you had to do it over again today, what would you do?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like Tommy said, we just wanted to be early. You know, like we happened to get those early Vive dev kits, and I had something running for the DK2 and put it over on the Vive, and it was very special. And so really the motivation there was more exploring what the headset did best. You know, what you could do with the headset that you couldn't do with any other thing. But if we did Tilt Brush right now, I don't know if it would be too different. You know, I think that very quickly, Tommy's getting into the game early, but very quickly you will start to see more of like the augmented reality headsets and things where you are scanning your room in real time. And at that point, I think a version of Tilt Brush would be much more about like working within your environment. You know, I love that metaphor, by the way. It's the indigenous as opposed to the colonial version of it. And so that would change the way that the application works in terms of, right now you scale the entire environment that you're in. It would be much more about like creating more locally and scaling those things. And I think all of that technology that's coming maybe imminently here, right, will be very exciting for creators in that same space to explore and think about how rather than just creating in this blank canvas, you're starting with your couch and you're building off of that, or maybe you're extruding the mesh that is scanned in real time and turning that into its own model. And also, Tilt Brush is open sourced, so somebody go do that, please.
Cool.
And you can make Tilt Brush competitive. Sorry, I'm the competitive one on stage. But seriously, anything. There are all these great fun apps where a lot of people. I heard somebody yesterday literally saying they use Tilt Brush with their headset, and they do climb all around their room, and then they have their kids come in and trace it after they've done that, which I thought was cool.
That's great. Yeah.
But as far as competitive, we have had competitions already in the communities where people have a certain time limit, can draw a certain thing, and then they vote on those and stuff. It's cool stuff. I mean, people are creative.
Yeah.
Actually, in my presentation this morning on Reality Faucet, I introduced our first competitive game experience a little early, unexpectedly. We put a basketball hoop into that you could nail up to the wall or just have floating in space and toss basketballs into, but we've set it up with Game Center so that there's a leaderboard that appears when the basketball hoop comes out, and if any of our thousands of customers in the world has got their basketball hoop out, you might both be on that leaderboard. And it's interesting because we've made it, you can't see them of course, but we've set it up so that you can hear when they've made a basket. And you can see their scores going up on the leaderboard. And it's very fast, a fraction of a second to see their score increasing. You're hearing the ding ding, a different pitch from your ding. And your blood pressure goes up and you're competing. And the fact that you can't see, well, actually, it was a beta tester on the other end who were also on FaceTime, but you don't have to be. You're in the game with another person or 1,000 other people, and you're in AR locally. And I think it's a great way to engage people and to bring, especially at a time when not everyone has a LiDAR iPad or phone. It's a great way to find your coterie and compete on a level playing field.
You mentioned your demo a little. I thought the one you had where you were rolling a ball around a room and finding all of the different surfaces, and then you were rolling the ball over the dog on the couch.
Yes.
I thought that was pretty cool. You want to talk about how hard that might be to do, I guess, or I don't know.
Well, in a weird way, it's easy. You just have to mess up. It's funny the way caring about space means it's no fun on a flat table or a bedspread. But if you got some clutter, then it gets interesting. And here's another, right? So Pantomime's whole thing is being able to reach in 3D. You're not, because there's a legitimate question of, well, any of these mobile experiences, if you're really just touching a screen rather than doing something else, how much of a physical game is it? But our philosophy, and in fact our patent, is about device presence, where you can actually scoop things up, have a cup or a shovel or whatever attached to your, and this I discovered almost accidentally a week ago when we put darts, and you really can stick a dart into something, a real wall in your place, and really shows off how accurate the LiDAR is when the dart end is sitting there. So I threw some darts into a flat screen TV or a flat wall, and then I stuck a plank on them, and it supported them nicely, and I had set it up so that there were only 6 darts, and if you threw a 7th dart, the first one would get pulled out. And suddenly I was playing a Jenga-like game. And by the way, our whole style is perfect for a Jenga. We'll have a grip that lets you move things around and puzzles as much as games. But here I am throwing these darts, and if I throw them in the right place in the right order, then the plank starts to walk down the wall. And if I have, that would be level 1. Level 2 would be let the box balance and go all the way down the wall. Level 3 might be a box on each end of the plank and a ball in the middle. Can you really make, So there are all of these challenges, physical challenges, that come out of unexpected places once you're in this weird indigenous world of AR and the room that you're in. So, accidentally inventing games, or as kids, anyone else make contraptions around the house? Thank you. There are things that are almost games, or almost puzzles, or just fun ways of living that are enabled in a new way that I literally haven't seen since I was very young.
Yeah, some of these things they kind of blow my mind. Like I think Zuckerberg, didn't he mention like playing 3-on-3 basketball with a remote? I was going like, how do you block somebody's shot?
I block it with a dart.
3 people here and 3 people somewhere else, and they're playing against each other. I didn't quite get it. I don't know how you would do that.
I mean, it's just the same as you would play in physical reality. If it's programmed properly, just block it.
I guess.
Just block it. I mean, it's like with Echo Arena. You block the shot or grab it or whatever. Same thing you would do with the basketball, block it or grab it. With football, intercept it.
Maybe no different from a tennis game or something like that. Then.
Well,
I don't know.
With tennis, hopefully nobody's catching your ball. I mean.
Yeah, this is kind of giving me a
We got off track, Dean.
I guess I am curious what you expect from like more technologies coming down the road, and how soon. What are you looking forward to, or what do you want, say, the likes of Facebook or Apple to do? Tommy?
I'm surprised we haven't seen more eye tracking on devices yet. I think that's a tech that I would have figured would be here a long time ago, because it can help with performance and a lot of things like that. I'm very happy to see hand tracking coming more and more. It's a difficult problem, it seems like. It's a little bit with voice recognition. That last 5% kind of ruins everything that has to do with video games, or you need to be very precise. And but once we're there, obviously hands is going to be the most intuitive things we can interact with.
NBS or David?
I think 2 things. I think there's some stealth technologies already out there, which I'll get to in a second. But I sort of had to laugh when people from Facebook were saying, and we've got special sensors that you can put on your face so people can see that you have facial expressions. And I was like, oh no, that's exactly what's wrong with VR. That's we're so much less when we don't have our faces. Even if there's a camera stuck on there and we're no longer blind, we still may have lost big parts of our faces, and it pushes me more toward the mobile style, maybe even a big tablet or whatever, but the mobile style of things. But I'm saying, in a funny way, and I'm sure we'll see it a year or 2 from now, most people who have an iPhone Pro or iPad Pro don't even know that they can do vivid, magical augmented reality. They got it because it had a better camera, because their phone company was giving them more credit. Or it's not, you know, Apple didn't even mention augmented reality at their big iPhone 13, even though it's such a wonderful improvement that now our app does shadows that it couldn't before with the M1 and the Bionic 15, A15. We can do realistic shadows and still be running at 50 frames per second. So there's, in the pockets of tens of millions of people, there is an XR engine hiding that they've never thought of using, and at some point there'll be a killer app that wakes everyone up to the fact that they don't have to buy any new hardware to do fantastic XR.
Cool. Sonya?
So, I'm not a fan of phones and tablets necessarily, because I think we spent enough time with people looking down at something, which is part of the reason you know, my family never had any cell phones, tablets, console games and stuff, because you're just looking down too much. And
sounds like VR headsets are worse on that front. Like
no, with
you're only
VR,
seeing your own world, I guess. Or,
well, with VR, you're actually, thankfully, you know, thanks to presence, the immersive factor, then you actually still feel like you're in there and next to the person who's with you. So I would absolutely disagree with the idea that VR isolates us and say that it brings us closer together, because you have an environment where, yes, we're digital, but you still have presence where you feel like you're really there with that person. And so that brings in some of the other questions that we may or may not have time to get to, but we've discussed this before, where you have cultural issues that we're going to have to address, societal issues. You know, how do we handle the fact that we're actually able to touch people in that environment? And that's a different topic. I just wanted to finish on this current question, which is that AR is great. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And there's definitely, I like it also because you're using the glasses and you're actually looking forward. You can, like you were saying, you can still interact and look at people and have that without constantly looking down at a device. And so I think that's good. But for me personally, I love the immersive aspect of VR, that I feel like I'm in there and actually can be with people who are very far away. Because some people, many of you are blessed to live with someone or be around people regularly or go to a job or go to school. There are a lot of people who aren't. There are a lot of people who, you know, for whatever reason, live alone, or older people who aren't mobile, they can't go anywhere, or kids who, we have many teenagers in the VR ecosystem who are absolutely completely ignored, and they need to go into an environment where they have people to talk to that seems real to them. It's very physical. And you know, it's visceral. It's very much, there's presence there. And so I think for that reason, as far as knowing what tech is coming, I've seen some of it, and it's fantastic and great. But I personally just, on a social community aspect, like the fact that it engages people, whether it's AR or VR, it engages people like this, as opposed to having people doing this. So.
Well, and I think that's what the eye tracking, you know, would benefit the most, right? I've always been, I feel like I've been working in and out with hand tracking for the past 8 years or something like that, and I'm still a little bit skeptical that it's like the de facto game input type of thing, but I will say that it does leaps and bounds for the feeling of being next to someone, like seeing their hands, and you pick up like the character of the person, you know, what you don't get with just controllers and head in a virtual space. But to answer your question, Dean, I think the thing that I'm most excited about is, you know, seeing like the LiDAR sensors, the 3D sensors, the real-time scanning while you're inside a virtual environment. There's a lot of safety things that can like come out of that. To me, it feels like an aspect that has not, just hasn't been explored quite as much, because all the pieces haven't really been there. Like, you're right, there are, you know, hundreds of millions of phones out there that have a beautiful LiDAR scanner on them that most people don't know about. But then you're still limited to, you have to hold it, it's not stereoscopic, and your input, is 2D and touch-based.
Actually, let me raise the issue with you, because that's not actually true. And our approach to device presence really begs a bunch of important questions about ubiquitous computing. So as I mentioned, you can actually still get them. There's one called Bug Farm that's on both the Mac and on the iPad and iPhone networked. And when you're surrounded by screens, and many people have a big screen that's becoming more the center of their lives than it was before, all of those can all those can be reinforcing a virtual environment. That's one. The other is, we don't, in our apps, this isn't how you interact. You're scooping things up. Suddenly it's become a lightsaber. Suddenly it's knocking things over in the environment. You're not focused on that screen, and basically, Pantomime views stroking the screen as kind of a fake version of what we do. Once you accept that we're really surrounded by these devices, and maybe you don't even need that many new devices and sensors, maybe we need to think about the ones we have in a different way. You'll find videos at Pantomime of every screen, this computer, two computers, and three things, and they're all living in the same virtual world. And maybe that's closer to the future. And there's some more sensors too, and things building great models of the environment you're in. But that in a way, that's my co-founder Don Hopkins his mentor was considered the father of ubiquitous computing. What if recruiting the capabilities of the devices that are already around you is the future?
Interesting.
And by the way, when the Mac is running part of the virtual world in our multiplayer things, everything gets faster. So it's not all about mobile anymore. It's about networked capacity.
Yeah. So if you guys thought about these technologies and then what you'd want to play, does something else come to mind as far as just what's the game you really want to play that you can't otherwise do today, but with some of these new technologies coming in, with hand tracking or something, what could you do?
Well, I would like to, you mentioned this example of face tracking, and I actually think that's even more interesting in the realm of what I would love to see. I think since social interaction is so important, all these micro movements we do with the faces is vital to really have interesting conversations.
So maybe you could tell if somebody was lying to you.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. It's great.
Like playing poker.
Werewolf is a great game. You have to bluff, things like that. Much harder at this moment.
The psychologists say that it's the involuntary muscles in our eyes that convey our real emotions. So fortunately, masks only cover our mouths that are always lying.
You do one of those Blade Runner tests, right? Yeah.
What?
The Blade Runner test, they look in your eyes.
Yes.
It's like, oh, you're not human.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
When you think of the entire space that you're in, rather than just when you think of the entire space that you're in as being part of the world, I think of the Bug Farm was a small example of that. But if you picture and there was an old crab game, one of the original old. Suppose you're trying to catch a bunch of things that are running around your house, and it's more like you have to figure out what bait to give them and what cage to make for them, and it's a different kind of it's not sports exactly, but that's one vision. Every Halloween I think a little bit more about what Lester the Infester and Herman the Exterminator would do, competing with little time bombs in their environment as they make things that only get sprung later by virtual creatures.
Sonya, or what do you want?
What games I would like to play with the upcoming tech? Wow. So first of all, I would say my dream would be to play Echo VR on the Varho. That would be so awesome. But since it's an Oculus game and Varho is not an Oculus headset, that probably won't happen. But that would be very cool. When it comes to games in general, I love all games. We'll play pretty much anything as long as it has some activity, which is, I think a lot of people enjoy the fact that you can play games and have fun, but you're also getting fit doing that. And so that's just the motion and the activity. I like that. I also would like to see just more, plenty of creative, active games that aren't necessarily based on what we already have in existence. So like, for example, some people want to take, and there's nothing wrong with it, I like seeing us take ideas like tennis, golf, basketball, football, things that we mentioned already, and have them in VR. It's fine. But I'd really love to see people thinking outside the box and, really saying, what else can we do? What else can we do with this? I mean, literally, we are creating worlds. You can do anything you want. I'm not a developer, but I would play these games. So think about like, what's that game, Pong, or the game where those things that go like this and you hit the
Pong.
Yeah. Like, what if we had something like that in a virtual environment? I mean, they're just...
Isn't that Echo Arena?
No. But there are just so many ideas. So I'll play anything, look forward to seeing it on different types of headsets and stuff. And I definitely will add before I finish that I think it's important to have various options and types of options on the different types of headsets. So like today I did the Flow, the Vive Flow was amazing. Of course that's more meditation, relaxation. But for example, when you're talking about gaming and stuff, and we may get into this, but you have to think like people who aren't you. They're not developers and they're not the tech people. What's the average regular person going to get out of this? And so they may want to be healthier. They may want to be willing to spend a few $100s on a device, but they need that to be something they gain something out of. So can that help them save a little bit of money that they wouldn't have to spend if they continue to have to go to the doctor and get high blood pressure medication or diabetes medication? So what can you do about that? So you have to make it appealing to them to play the game and get benefit from it. One of the things you can do, for example, just a simple thing, is when you create whatever types of apps or games or whatever, you have some people who don't want to be in that multiplayer environment. You're going to always have that base community who maybe isn't comfortable with that. Well, one thing you can do for them, for example, is you can have stuff like the off-site leaderboards and such, and some people even don't want that. So that's where you also bring in stuff like competing against yourself. How long did I work out last time or meditate last time, and am I doing it a little longer this time? Or create tools that go with your products, such as biofeedback, where you can test the heart rate and stuff. Am I getting healthier? Am I losing weight? So if you have all these things integrated, the average consumer is going to benefit more from it. And I think I answered that question way more than you asked. but I have a lot of ideas about VR and AR gaming. So yeah, it's just a great, great thing. So
Yeah. Patrick?
I don't have any. I'm not holding on to any ideas. I don't have any. Like with any new technology, generally it's an exploration of what does this thing do the best, and then make something fun, around what it does the best, and try to hide the things that it does poorly. I do think though that I'm most excited for, like what your team is doing, Tommy. Like just the social aspects of it, like continuing as the technology like brings us closer together, getting more games that are just putting people together.
Yeah, everybody's talking about this metaverse, but Tommy's got a tiny verse here. You enjoying that?
Yeah. No, but just to follow up here a little bit, I definitely think it's so super interesting to do multiplayer experiments, because you need so little in order for it to turn into something fantastic and just have this conversation, and the game is just a tool for hanging out.
Because if you do a good job and create the foundation just a little tiny bit, it expands organically very nicely. And so it's that's a good point. Like you only need a little bit there, and if you do a good job with that, it can grow. So.
And this about the Tinyverse. We spoke a little bit earlier about that, and we have a game called Blaston, which is a dueling game, which is very intense, and we had a need for people to hang out a little bit and relax. So we built a lounge area where where it's more persistent. People can go there and they can start their own tournaments and watch other people play. And it was a great addition to the game, and I really like that building out from something that's already existing and working. In comparison to building this enormous new thing that encompasses everything in the world.
Well, to that point, just real quick, that's one of the things that a lot of the developers are seeing, especially because VR and AR, we are interacting, but especially with VR, you're interacting, you're immersed there, that all it takes is a small social area, just a small social area to really grow your community and build make your game population, your player base grow. Because if you have a game where you just go into the game and you start competing, you could have the greatest game in the world, but somehow your community still has to interact. And if you only have, let's say, 60 seconds before the countdown, let's say you all go into a communal lobby or whatever area where then the game starts, then there's no control from the player's perspective over, oh, hey, I just made a new friend here and I want to chat with him. Then suddenly you're stuck in a situation where you as a developer have just limited your player base and your community growth by taking them out of that conversation and sticking them into the competition because it starts. So if you have even a small area where people can pop into and talk and chat and hang out or whatever, or private areas, then that creates a scenario where you have an opportunity for them to be in control of it. And of course, we all know, it's good for players to have control of those types of things in game. So it's really important to have those areas. So I'm glad you do that.
I should mention that in our basketball game, there's something a little like that built in. There's a competition every 5 minutes, but 2 or 3 minutes of that is spent setting up, deciding where your basket is. And if we give people a higher score for being able to hit off a real wall before it goes into the basket. So where your placement is, there's open issues as to how other people see any of that, or whether that's just a time period where you're quietly setting up, or whether you're basically part of some kind of a Zoom or FaceTime-like chat before the game actually starts. But yeah, those times, that's also where you're kibitzing and saying, oh, that's not going to be a good place for your basket. Good luck. And trash talking, whatever it takes to make it a social experience.
Yeah, because the social part's
Q&A period now. If anybody wants to go up to the microphone here and ask a question, please do. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Hi, I'll just kind of go back to the past and talk about one thing and let you guys comment on it, so it's not really a question. So if I go back to the 2005 era, this is pre-XR VR, but this is Xbox, Sony PlayStation, and Nintendo Wii coming to the market, all at the same time. I don't know if you remember that chaos back then. Only one of those machines won. I don't know if you know which one it was, so I'll just tell you, it was the Nintendo Wii. And the question is, why did it win? It had the worst graphics. It had the best, or the smallest OS, the smallest CPU and GPU. It had characters that had their legs missing and their arms missing, but the audience didn't care. So I'm going to ask you, why did it win? Why did it win over PlayStation, which had, at the time, the best experience for a single player or a group of players real time, or Xbox, which had the fastest CPU and new games coming out? Why did Nintendo Wii win? And it goes back to something that was said at the panel. So I'll let you guys debate on that. I'll wait here. I'll give you the answer if you don't know.
I think it's part of it is that you're swinging something. You're swinging your body. It cares about, it's less about the visual and more about the motion.
It was the accelerometer. So it was the interaction. It was what you said. Get involved in the game. Figure out a way to have the player experience be actually involved in the activity. And it was the accelerometer that was the winner, and it was why the Nintendo Wii.
It was like a Blue Ocean product. It was like a Blue Ocean product too, right? So
yeah, that I don't know.
It was not in the Red Ocean.
I think that's a very, very good point. Personally, I feel that game consoles and things like that stagnated a little bit when it comes to the input, right? You have these amazing looking games with characters that look almost human, and you press R to, pay respect for
Yeah,
whatever.
I'll let somebody else ask a question, but I'm just...
Thank you. But that's one great thing with VR and AR, when you have hands and you can reach into the 3D world a little bit more.
There was that period starting in 2014 where people were so obsessed with resolution, and there was literally not even any controller, and it felt like everything was a Stephen Hawking simulation, that it was the real matter, and now it's finally coming into its own.
Go ahead.
Hi there. Very pragmatic question. As a creator, somebody who works on games, and so there is a big keystone of the industry that's missing when it comes to VR, which is publishers, right? So there's very few publishers specializing in VR or accepting VR. Thank you, resolution. Vertigo and Dreams, there is only a very few of them. When you go to see traditional publishers, they're like freak out or like, oh no, this is not for us, or we don't understand that medium. And so how can we create an industry that is flourishing with games? Now we hear a lot about millionaire games, like finally game is on the Oculus platform making more than $1 million, great. But it's still very hard for game creators to make their games, knowing that if you're not financed by Oculus or if you don't have your own money, it's really hard to just make it. So I guess, Tony, this question is for you, but in general, like, how can we have more publishers or have a better ecosystem in that field to create more cool games in VR?
Yeah, what would help the ecosystem that's maybe not there now?
I agree. I definitely think that there needs to be more democratic funding initiatives to get to, like, indies have been fantastic on PC and mobile platforms on creating new things, and I'm not super fond of the publisher-developer relationship. I think that's been to a large extent broken for many years. Now there is finally some really great indie publishers like Raw Fury and Devolver and companies like that seems to taking it to heart and doing it in a better way. I interpret a little bit what Zuckerberg was saying about their vision of the metaverse is to have content creators more empowered and being able to take their work directly to consumers. But the details of that, of course, remain to be seen. I think part of it is also that VR has been so small up to this point, still rather few headsets, and it wasn't until Quest 2 came out when we really seen the retention of people loving the headset and coming back and replaying and doing more things.
There's a contrast, we don't want to talk about NFTs too much, but there's a contrast to the crypto community now, right? There's these crypto enthusiasts and crypto freaks, they're making these early games extremely successful, like, Axie Infinity, etc. And like, NBA Top Shot, the NFTs are selling, they sell like $800 million worth in a year on a base of 1 million people. So the average person's spending like $800 on Top Shots. And that has enabled that market to take off quickly, right? And you almost wish there were more of that in the VR space, because there are some very, very enthusiastic people, but I don't quite see as much of the same kind of success or overnight successes.
Yeah, the curve is much more different, right? The curve in the VR space has been like that for a number of years, and crypto is just a hockey stick that keeps bending up and up and up. So.
Yeah.
Do you want to do the last question? We have one more.
Oh, sorry, we got another question, sorry.
Hi, so imagine it's the year 2035 and the real world metaverse and the virtual world metaverse exist. Which one do you guys think will have a larger player base? So the real world metaverse or the virtual metaverse?
The AR metaverse or the VR metaverse, I guess. Yeah.
I thought we were all under the impression that VR is gone by 2035. I'm sorry.
The indigenous win.
Now the stage starts getting violent.
Yeah.
And we're like,
I like Tim Sweeney's idea of like having just a set of glasses and you flip them up and they're AR and you flip them down and they're VR. Right?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I kind of tease, but I
well, that's where the
yeah,
definition
don't
thing comes in. Do we really want
Yeah.
to? Do we really want to limit ourselves by saying this is this and this is this? Because in reality, I didn't do that on purpose. You have the fact is we don't know what we're going to have in 2035, and we could have very much a hybrid situation where
we're gonna have higher oceans. Sorry.
yes, this is true. So we're all definitely going to have to make sure that the headsets are above our ankles. And so, it's one of those things where we don't know what's coming, but I think that it's a good question, but we don't know the tools we're going to have. We can just be very excited about the fact that we get to help build it.
Thank you for giving a good answer instead of my bad choice.
Thank you for having us on this panel and for allowing us to
Yes.
be here in front of you guys today.
Yeah.
And also, may I say one last thing? I really have talked to a lot of people at this conference that have come from overseas. That was just opened up this week. And just want to say a huge shout out to all the people who worked so hard to be here and in person to talk about their games or their products or whatever. And thank you all for that. It just really means a lot. We are a community, and so it's good for everybody to know that each person here is appreciated.
It's not quite face to face, but it's mask to mask. So.
With our eyes showing.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. And
Thank you, everyone. Great job. All right, so we're going to take a quick break here, maybe about a half hour, exchange this stage over, but don't leave. 3:45, the best part of the show. Best in Show with Ori and Bar when we come back. See you soon.